Jake Morrison opened his eyes in the darkness of his cabin bedroom. Something was wrong. He could feel it before he saw anything. The air felt different, and there was a smell he did not recognize. Then he saw her standing beside his bed. The woman had silver hair that glowed softly in the moonlight coming through the window. Her ears were pointed like something from a fantasy story. She wore armor that looked damaged and torn. Blue liquid dripped from a wound on her side. The liquid glowed with a strange light. She looked at Jake with eyes that seemed ancient and tired. Her voice was soft when she spoke. "May I stay with you tonight?" Human. Jake reached under his pillow where he kept his gun. His hand found the cold metal and he pulled it out, but something made him pause. He did not pull the trigger. The woman did not move away from the weapon. She just stood there waiting. Her breathing was shallow and painful. Jake could see she was badly hurt. He sat up slowly and turned on the lamp beside his bed. The light revealed more details. Her armor was made of material he had never seen before. It looked like metal, but moved like cloth. The blue blood kept flowing from several wounds. Her face was beautiful, but marked with exhaustion. Jake had been a Marine for 15 years before he retired. He had seen combat in 3 different countries. He knew what a wounded soldier looked like. This woman was a warrior, and she was dying. Jake put the gun down on the nightstand. He got out of bed and grabbed his medical kit from the closet. The woman watched him but did not speak. When he approached her, she did not back away. Jake helped her sit in the chair by the window. He began cutting away the damaged armor around her wounds. The blue blood was warm and thick. It reminded him of mercury, but it glowed. He used antiseptic and bandages from his kit. The woman flinched when he cleaned the wounds but made no sound. While he worked, she began to tell him her story. Her name was Lyria. She came from another dimension. Her people were called the Althari. They had fought a war for 10,000 years. The enemy was called the Void Swarm. The Void consumed entire worlds. They did not just destroy civilizations, they erased them from existence completely, as if they had never been real. The Althari fought with everything they had. They had technology far beyond Earth. They had weapons that could tear through space itself, but none of it was enough. The void kept coming. World after world fell, dimension after dimension collapsed. Lyria was a princess of her people. She commanded fleets in the final battles. She watched her homeworld burn. She saw her family die. Now she and her companion were among the last survivors. Jake finished bandaging her wounds. He asked about her companion. Lyria pointed toward the forest behind the cabin. Jake grabbed a flashlight and went outside. The night air was cold against his skin. He walked into the trees following the sound of heavy breathing. Then he saw it. The dragon was massive, at least 30 feet long from nose to tail. Her scales were deep red and gold. They reflected the flashlight beam like polished metal. Her wings were folded against her sides. Each wing was torn and burned. The dragon lay on the ground, barely moving. Her eyes were closed and her breathing rattled. Jake approached slowly. He had no idea if this creature was dangerous, but she looked like she was dying. He knelt beside her enormous head. The scales felt warm under his hand. Suddenly something touched his mind. It was not words, but feelings and images. The dragon was named Emberwing. She was ancient beyond human understanding. She had fought alongside the Althari for thousands of years. She was tired and ready to die, but Lyria needed her. Jake felt the dragon searching his memories. She saw his time in the Marines. She saw the friends he lost in combat. She saw the guilt he carried. She saw why he lived alone in these mountains. The dragon approved of what she found. Jake spent the next hour treating Emberwing as best he could. He used supplies from his barn. He cleaned her wounds and wrapped them with tarps. It was not proper medical care, but it was something when he returned to the cabin. Lyria was standing by the window. She looked stronger now that her wounds were treated. She told Jake why she came to Earth. The void had followed her through the dimensional barrier. They would find Earth within days, maybe hours. Earth had no defenses against them. Humanity would be erased just like the Ylthari. But Lyria had been watching Earth for months. She studied human wars and human technology. She saw something that gave her hope. Humans were adaptable. Humans changed their tactics quickly. Humans refused to surrender even when defeat seemed certain. The Ylthari had been too rigid in their thinking. They could not change fast enough, but humans might be different. Lyria chose Jake specifically. She watched him through dimensional viewing technology. She saw a man who understood war, a man who could improvise and survive, a man who helped others even at cost to himself. She needed someone like that. Earth needed someone like that. Jake listened to everything she said. Part of him thought he was dreaming, or maybe he was going crazy, but the wounds he treated were real. The dragon in his forest was real, and something about Lyria felt true. He made a decision. He would help her. If this void was coming, then Earth needed warning. He walked to his desk and picked up his satellite phone. He called a number he had not used in 3 years. Lisa Chen answered on the second ring. She had been Jake's commanding officer in the Marines. Now she worked for a classified military research program. Jake told her to come to his cabin immediately. He told her to bring a medical team and scientists. He told her to bring weapons. Lisa wanted to know why Jake looked at Lyria standing in the moonlight. He told Lisa that first contact had just happened and humanity was about to go to war. Lisa said she would be there in 4 hours. Jake hung up the phone. Lyria asked if he believed her story. Jake said he believed what he could see. She was wounded, and she needed help. Her dragon was dying and needed care. Whether she was from another dimension or not, they would figure out. But he would not turn away someone who asked for sanctuary. Lyria smiled for the first time. It was a sad smile, but genuine. She told Jake that she made the right choice. He was exactly what Earth needed. Jake made coffee, and they sat at his kitchen table. Lyria ate some bread and cheese. Her body could process human food. She told Jake more about the void, how they moved between dimensions, how they attacked, how they could be hurt but not killed permanently. She explained that the Ylthari had weapons that could disrupt void creatures temporarily, but humans did not have those weapons. They would need to build them. Jake asked if human technology could be adapted. Lyria said she did not know the Ylthari technology was based on dimensional physics. Earth science did not understand dimensions yet, but maybe human creativity could find another way. As dawn approached, Jake went back outside to check on Emberwing. The dragon was sleeping. Her breathing was stronger now. Jake sat beside her and watched the sunrise. He thought about what was coming. An enemy that erased worlds from existence, technology beyond human understanding. A war that lasted 10,000 years, and Earth had maybe 3 days to prepare. Jake stood up and walked back to the HFY cabin. Lyria was looking at photographs on his wall. Pictures of his Marine unit. Pictures of his family. She asked about the people in the photos. Jake told her about his squad. How they died in an ambush overseas. How he survived because he was on patrol. How he came to these mountains to escape the memories. Lyria touched. One photograph gently, she said she understood survivor guilt. She carried the weight of billions who died while she lived. Jake and Lyria stood together watching the sunrise through the window. Neither of them spoke. They did not need to. They both knew what was coming. War was coming. Death was coming. The void was coming. But Earth would not face it unprepared. Not if Jake could help it. Not if Lyria could teach them. The sound of helicopters echoed in the distance. Lisa Chen was arriving with her team. The war for Earth was about to begin. The helicopters landed in the clearing near Jake's cabin. Lisa Chen stepped out first. She wore her military uniform with the insignia of a colonel. Behind her came soldiers and scientists carrying equipment cases. Lisa looked at Jake standing on the porch. Then she saw Lyria beside him. Lisa stopped walking. Her hand moved toward her sidearm. Jake held up his hand and told her to wait. He led the team into his barn, where Emberwing rested. The dragon opened one massive eye and looked at the humans. Several soldiers raised their weapons. Emberwing made a sound deep in her chest. It was not a growl, but it made everyone freeze. Lyria spoke to the dragon in a language that sounded like music. Emberwing relaxed and closed her eye. Lisa stared at the dragon for a full minute without speaking. Then she looked at Jake and asked what the hell was going on. Jake and Lyria spent the next 2 hours explaining everything. The scientists took samples of Lyria blood. They examined her armor and weapons. They scanned Emberwing with medical equipment. The dragon allowed it all with patient tolerance. Lisa listened to everything without interrupting. When they finished, she made a phone call. Within 6 hours, the cabin was surrounded by military vehicles. General Kate Harrison arrived by helicopter. She was a hard woman with gray hair and cold eyes. She had commanded forces in the Middle East and Eastern Europe. She did not believe in aliens or dragons. Until she saw them herself, General Harrison questioned Lyria for hours. She wanted to know everything about the Void. How they moved, how they attacked, how they could be killed. Lyria answered every question. Honestly, she showed them recordings stored in her armor computer. Holographic images appeared in the air. They showed battles across impossible landscapes, void creatures that looked like living nightmares, Aelthari ships burning in space, cities vanishing as if they never existed. The military personnel watched in silence. Many of them looked sick. General Harrison's face remained hard, but her eyes showed fear. She asked Lyria how long Earth had. Lyria said, maybe 3 days, maybe less. The Void Scouts had followed her through the dimensional barrier. They would find Earth soon. Once they found it, the invasion would begin. Harrison immediately declared a national emergency. The president was informed. The United Nations was contacted. Every major military power on Earth began mobilizing, but nobody knew what they were mobilizing. Against Jake worked with Lyria to analyze her weapons. She had a rifle that fired bolts of compressed dimensional energy. It could tear through any material Earth had. The scientists could not figure out how it worked. The technology was too advanced. But Jake had an idea. He asked Lyria how the void creatures manifested in normal space. She explained that they existed between dimensions. When they entered real space, they were vulnerable for a moment. During that moment, energy weapons could hurt them. Jake wondered if human electromagnetic pulse weapons might work. EMP grenades were designed to disrupt electronics. Maybe they could disrupt void creatures too. The scientists were skeptical, but they agreed to test the theory. They could not test it on actual void creatures yet, but they could use the data from Lyria recordings. The Pico simulations were promising. General Harrison approved production of modified EMP weapons. Factories across the country began working around the clock. Meanwhile, Jake trained with Lyria. She taught him Aelthari combat techniques, how to sense dimensional distortions, how to move efficiently in battle, how to kill things that should not exist. The training was brutal. Jake's muscles screamed and his head pounded. Sensing dimensional energy felt like shoving needles through his brain. But he kept going. He had to be ready. On the second day, the first Void Scout appeared. It manifested over a small town in Oregon. People called the police, reporting a strange cloud. The cloud moved wrong. It flowed upward instead of with the wind. It had colors that hurt to look at. When it touched a building, the building began to fade. The walls became transparent. Then they vanished completely, as if they had never been there. Police arrived and fired their weapons. The bullets passed through the void, Scout harmlessly. More people started vanishing, not dying, just ceasing to exist. Even memories of them became hazy and uncertain. The military arrived within 30 minutes. They brought the new EMP weapons. Soldiers fired EMP grenades into the Void Scout. The creature suddenly became solid. For just a moment, it had a shape. Something like a jellyfish made of smoke and teeth. Conventional weapons hit it while it was solid. The Void Scout screamed. The sound made everyone within a mile feel terror. But the creature was hurt. It retreated back through dimensional space. 40 people had vanished. The building was gone, but the Void Scout was driven away. It was the first human victory. General Harrison ordered the new weapons distributed worldwide. Every military base received shipments. Police forces got their own supplies. Civilians were evacuated from major cities. Underground shelters were opened. Hospitals prepared for mass casualties. The news media tried to explain what was happening. But how do you explain something that erases reality? Panic spread across the globe. Some people rioted. Others prayed. Many just waited in fear. Jake watched the news reports with Lyria in his cabin. She looked sad. She told him this was how it started on her world, too. First came scouts, then came hunters, then came the fleet. Jake asked how long between each stage. Lyria said it varied. Sometimes days, sometimes hours. Earth did not have much time. That night, more Void Scouts appeared. Over Beijing, over Moscow, over London, over Mexico City. Each time the military responded with EMP weapons. Some battles were won, others were lost. Entire neighborhoods vanished in Beijing. A hospital ceased to exist in London. The death toll was impossible to calculate. How do you count people who never existed? Jake and Lyria flew to a military research base in Nevada. Emberwing was strong enough to fly now. The dragon carried them both on her back. Jake had never flown before. Not like this. The wind screamed past them. The ground fell away below. Emberwing wings beat with power that shook the air. They arrived at the base in 2 hours, a flight that would have taken a day by conventional aircraft. At the base, scientists had been studying Lyria armor. They discovered the material could be replicated, not perfectly, but close enough. They could make shields that would protect against void attacks. They could make armor that soldiers could wear. Production would take weeks. General Harrison said they did not have weeks. She ordered every factory retooled immediately. Cost did not matter. International cooperation did not matter. Only survival mattered. Jake met with a team of engineers. He showed them recordings of how Emberwing fought. The dragon used fire that burned hotter than anything on Earth. The fire could hurt. Void creatures permanently, not kill them, but cause lasting damage. The engineers wondered if they could replicate that heat, not with dragon biology, but with chemical weapons. Thermite burned at extreme temperatures, white phosphorus burned even hotter. Maybe a combination could work. They began designing new munitions. Meanwhile, Lyria worked with military strategists. She taught them Elthari battle tactics, how to coordinate attacks across multiple dimensions, how to predict void movement patterns, how to defend cities against creatures that ignored walls. The strategists were brilliant. They adapted quickly. They combined Elthari knowledge with human military doctrine. Something new emerged, a hybrid fighting style that used the best of both species. On the third day, the Void Hunters arrived. They were much larger than the Scouts. Each hunter was the size of a building. They had forms that shifted and changed. Too many limbs, too many eyes. Geometry that broke the mind. One appeared over New York City. It descended on Manhattan like a falling nightmare. Buildings vanished as it passed. Streets ceased to exist. People ran screaming. The military engaged immediately. Fighters' jets fired missiles with EMP warheads. The hunter solidified for moments. Conventional weapons hit it. The creature roared, and the sound shattered windows for miles. But it was hurt. Emberwing arrived with a squadron of modified fighter jets. The dragon dove at the hunter, breathing fire. The jets followed, firing thermite rockets. The hunter tried to phase out of reality, but the combined attacks kept it solid. It could not escape. For the first time, a void hunter died on Earth. The creature dissolved into particles of light. Then those particles faded away. New York celebrated, but the victory was costly. Half of Manhattan was gone. 3 million people vanished. The memories of them were fading already. General Harrison held a press conference. She told the world the truth. Humanity was at war with an enemy from another dimension. They could be hurt. They could be killed. But the cost was terrible. She asked for volunteers to join the military. Millions responded within hours. People wanted to fight. They wanted to defend their world. Jake stood with Lyria watching the news. She told him she was impressed. Most species collapsed in despair when the void arrived, but humans got angry. They fought back. She said maybe Earth had a chance after all. Then the alarm sounded. Sensors detected massive dimensional distortions. Something big was coming. Something much bigger than scouts or hunters. Lyria's face went pale. She recognized the readings. The Void Fleet had arrived. Jake looked at her and asked how many ships Lyria checked the sensor data. Her hands shook. She said 50 capital ships, plus countless smaller vessels. It was a full invasion force. Earth had 1 day to prepare. Maybe less. General Harrison gave orders to every military on Earth. This was not about nations anymore. This was about survival. Every weapon, every soldier, every resource, all of it would be needed. Jake and Lyria returned to the research base. They had to finalize the new weapons. They had to prepare Emberwing. They had to plan the defense, because tomorrow the real war would begin, the battle for Earth, the battle for humanity existence, the battle that would decide if their world survived or vanished forever, like so many others. The United Nations Security Council met in emergency session. Every member nation sent their leaders. The meeting was broadcast worldwide. People watched on every screen across the planet. General Harrison stood at the podium. She explained the situation with brutal honesty. An invasion fleet was coming, 50 massive ships. Filled with void soldiers, Earth had perhaps 12 hours, maybe less. Then Lyria appeared on the screens, her holographic image projected from the Nevada base. People around the world saw an alien for the first time. She stood tall, despite her injuries. Her silver hair glowed under the lights. She spoke in clear, calm words. She told them about the Aelthari, about the war that lasted 10,000 years, about the worlds that fell, about the civilizations that were erased. But she also told them about hope. She said Earth had something her people lacked. Humans adapted quickly. Humans innovated under pressure. Humans refused to accept defeat. The Aelthari were too rigid in their thinking. They fought the same way for centuries. The Void learned their patterns and countered them, but humans changed tactics constantly. Every battle taught them something new. Every defeat made them try harder. Lyria made an offer to Earth. She would share all Aelthari technology. She would teach humanity everything she knew. She would fight beside them until the end. In return, she asked for sanctuary, not just for herself, but for other survivors scattered across dimensions. She explained that Earth location in dimensional space was unique. It sat at a convergence point. Multiple dimensions touched here. That made it valuable. If Earth could be defended, it would become a fortress, a rallying point for all species fighting the void. The Security Council debated for 2 hours. Some nations wanted to reject the offer. They feared the technology would upset the balance of power. Others wanted to surrender. They thought fighting was hopeless, but most wanted to fight. They wanted to defend their day world. The vote was called. Every nation voted yes, Earth would accept Lyria. Offer, humanity would stand with the Aelthari. The alliance was formed. Factories across every continent retooled immediately. Chinese engineers worked with American scientists, Russian military, coordinated with European forces. African nations provided rare minerals. South American countries opened their manufacturing capacity. India contributed its massive workforce. Japan shared advanced robotics. Every border opened. Every rivalry was set aside. Humanity united for the first time in history. Jake worked with a team at the Nevada base. They were reverse engineering Aelthari shield technology. The shields created a bubble of stable dimensional space. Void attacks could not penetrate them, but the shields required enormous power. Each shield generator could protect maybe one city block. They needed thousands of them. Production began immediately. Meanwhile, Emberwing allowed human doctors to examine her. They studied how her body produced fire. The dragon biology was incredible. She had organs that compressed dimensional energy, then released it as plasma. The heat was far beyond anything Earth science could produce, but they could approximate it. Chemical engineers designed new fuel mixtures. Weapons manufacturers built new flamethrowers. The prototypes burned hot enough to hurt void creatures, not as effective as dragonfire, but good enough. Lyria trained fighter pilots in new tactics. She taught them to sense dimensional distortions. Human pilots could not do it naturally, but they could use modified sensors. The sensors detected when void creatures phased between dimensions that gave pilots a split-second warning. A split second was enough for a good pilot squadron after squadron trained around the clock. They learned to coordinate with Emberwing. The dragon would lead attacks. Her fire would force void creatures solid. Then human weapons would finish them. It was working in simulations, but simulations were not real combat. Jake spent hours with Lyria reviewing battle plans. They studied every engagement the Elthari ever fought. They looked for patterns, for weaknesses, for anything that could help. Jake noticed something. The Void always used the same invasion strategy. Scouts came first to find targets. Hunters came next to weaken defenses. Then the fleet arrived to finish everything. But what if Earth disrupted that pattern? What if they attacked the fleet before it was ready? Lyria said that was impossible. The fleet shields were too strong. No weapon could penetrate them. Jake asked about the anchor ship. Every Void fleet had one. It maintained the dimensional connection. Without it, the fleet could not stay in normal space. Lyria confirmed this was true, but the anchor ship was the most protected vessel. It sat in the center of the fleet. Reality itself bent around it. Getting close to it was suicide. Jake smiled. He said suicide missions were a human specialty. General Harrison approved the plan. They would build a strike team small and fast. They would punch through the fleet, destroy the anchor ship, cut off the invasion. The best pilots volunteered immediately. The best soldiers joined them. Jake volunteered to lead the mission. Lyria refused to let him go alone. She would come with him. Emberwing would carry them together. They had the best chance, Harrison tried to argue. But Lyria and Jake were both stubborn. The general finally agreed. She had no authority over an alien princess anyway. The strike team prepared their equipment. They modified a human nuclear warhead. It would be carried through dimensional space, detonated inside the anchor ship. The explosion in dimensional space would cascade. It would tear the anchor ship apart from the inside. Lyria said the plan might work, but they would have maybe 60 seconds to escape. After that, the dimensional explosion would consume everything. Jake said 60 seconds was plenty of time. He was lying, but nobody called him on it. Around the world, people prepared for battle. Cities were evacuated to underground shelters. Millions of civilians moved to safety. Those who stayed behind were volunteers, fighters, defenders, people willing to die for their world. Weapons were distributed to military forces globally. Every soldier received EMP grenades. Every fighter jet carried modified missiles. Every tank had new ammunition. The shield generators were installed in major cities. They would protect key locations, hospitals, command centers, evacuation routes. But most of the world was undefended. There was not enough time, not enough resources. Billions would be exposed when the battle started. Religious leaders held services around the world. Some prayed for victory, others prayed for mercy, many just prayed for courage. Jake stood on the tarmac at the Nevada base. The strike team aircraft sat ready. Emberwing rested nearby. Her wounds were healed now. She looked magnificent in the morning sun. Lyria checked her armor. One final time. She had new weapons built by human engineers, hybrid designs combining both technologies. She looked at Jake and told him he did not have to do this. He could command from safety. Let others take the risk. Jake shook his head. He said when a guest asks for sanctuary, you protect them. That meant fighting beside them, not hiding while others died. Lyria smiled. She said humans were very strange, but she was glad she found them. The alarms sounded. Sensors detected the Void fleet entering Earth orbit. 50 massive ships, each 1 kilometers long. They blotted out the sun over entire continents. People looked up and saw darkness. The sky itself seemed wrong. Reality rippled like water. Then the Void began deploying ground forces. Portals opened over every major city. Void soldiers poured through, millions of them. They looked like nightmares given form. Some had too many limbs, others had none. Some were made of smoke, others were made of screaming faces. They fell upon cities like locusts. The military engaged immediately. EMP weapons fired by the thousands. Conventional weapons followed. The battles were chaos. Soldiers fought creatures that defied physics. Tanks fired at enemies that phased through walls. Aircraft bombed targets that reformed after being destroyed. But humanity was learning. Every squadron adapted tactics in real time. When EMP did not work, they used thermite. When thermite failed, they used overwhelming firepower. Slowly, they found what worked. Emberwing flew over New York with a fighter squadron. The Dragon burned through Void soldiers. The jets followed her lead. They protected evacuation routes. They held the line at critical points. People fled to the shelters beneath their feet. General Harrison coordinated the global defense. She had command centers on every continent, real-time data streamed from every battlefield. She made decisions in seconds, redirecting forces, calling in reserves, sacrificing positions to save others. It was brutal mathematics, trading lives to buy time. But it was working. Earth was holding. Barely. The casualties were horrific. Entire battalions vanished. Whole city blocks ceased to exist. But humanity was not breaking. They were not running. They were fighting. Jake and Lyria boarded Emberwing. The strike team launched 12 aircraft plus 1 Dragon. They flew straight up toward the Void fleet. The fleet defenses engaged immediately. Void fighters swarmed them. They were fast and deadly. 3 strike team aircraft died in the first minute, but the others pushed through. Emberwing fire cleared a path. The human pilots followed. They flew between the massive capital ships. The scale was overwhelming. Each ship was larger than a city. They bristled with weapons. Reality warped around them. The strike team took more losses. 2 more aircraft exploded, but they were getting closer. They could see the anchor ship now. It sat in the center of the fleet. Darkness surrounded it like a cloak. Jake armed the nuclear device. He synchronized it with Lyria, dimensional scanner. They had 1 chance, 1 shot. Emberwing dove toward the anchor ship. Void defenses opened fire. Energy beams that should not exist. Missiles that moved through time. The Dragon dodged and weaved. Her scales absorbed hits that would vaporize steel. The remaining strike team aircraft provided cover. They died one by one, drawing fire away from Emberwing, protecting the mission. Jake watched them sacrifice themselves. He memorized their names. If he survived, he would remember them. Emberwing reached the anchor ship hull. She burned a hole through the shields with concentrated fire. The Dragon flew inside, and everything changed. Inside the anchor ship, physics stopped making sense. Up was down. Left was right. Time moved in circles. Jake felt his mind stretching. Reality itself was breaking apart. Colors existed that had no names. Sounds came from directions that did not exist. His stomach twisted in impossible ways. Lyria grabbed his arm. She anchored him to something real. Her presence kept him sane. Emberwing flew through corridors that shifted and changed. The walls were made of darkness. The floor was made of screaming. The ceiling was made of nothing. Void soldiers manifested from the walls. They attacked in waves. Lyria fired her weapons. Energy bolts tore through the creatures. Jake used his rifle with EMP rounds. Together, they cleared a path, but more kept coming. The anchor ship was alive with them. Emberwing breath cut through the darkness. Her fire was the only constant, the only thing that stayed real. They flew deeper into the ship, following the dimensional readings. The ship's core pulled at them. It called to them. It wanted them. The corridors grew stranger. Jake saw his own reflection walking toward him. Then that reflection attacked. He fought himself. It knew every move he would make, because it was him. Lyria destroyed the reflection with her weapon. She told him not to look at anything too closely. The anchor ship played with perception. It fed on confusion and fear. Stay focused on the mission. Ignore everything else. They reached a vast chamber. The ship's core sat in the center. It was a sphere of pure darkness, but inside the darkness were lights, thousands of them. Each light was a stolen dimension, a world that the void had consumed. Jake could hear voices from inside, billions of voices crying out, begging, screaming, all the people who had been erased. They were still alive, trapped inside the core. Aware but unable to die, Jake felt sick. This was worse than death. This was eternal torment. Lyria's face was pale. She recognized some of the voices, her people, her family. They were in there, screaming for 10,000 years. Jake armed the nuclear device. He set the timer for 60 seconds. They had to leave now. Emberwing turned to fly back, but Void soldiers blocked the way, hundreds of them. Too many to fight through. The dragon roared and charged. Jake and Lyria fired their weapons. They cut through the enemy, but it was not enough. For every Void soldier they killed, 2 more appeared. They were being overwhelmed. The timer ticked down, 50 seconds. Emberwing was wounded now. Her scales cracked and bleeding, but she kept fighting. Jake took hits to his armor. The impacts broke ribs, but he kept shooting. Lyria moved like water, dodging attacks that should have killed her, cutting down enemies with impossible grace. But even she was slowing. They were not going to make it. 40 seconds. Jake realized the truth. They could not all escape. Someone had to stay behind. Someone had to hold the enemy, give the others time to flee. He made his decision. He told Lyria to go. Take Emberwing and fly. He would cover their escape. Lyria refused. She would not leave him. Jake grabbed her and looked in her eyes. He told her Earth needed her. Humanity needed her knowledge. He was just one soldier. She was a princess, a commander, the last of her people. She had to survive. Lyria's face twisted with emotion. She knew he was right, but she did not want to accept it. 30 seconds. Void. Soldiers pressed closer. Jake pushed Lyria toward Emberwing. He turned and fired into the enemy, giving them a target, drawing them away from the dragon. Lyria climbed onto Emberwing back. The dragon hesitated. Jake could feel her in his mind. She was arguing with him, telling him to come. He told her to protect Lyria. That was the mission now. 20 seconds. Emberwing roared. It was a sound of grief and rage. Then she flew, burning through the void. Soldiers carrying Lyria away. Jake watched them go. He kept firing. His ammunition was running low. The void surrounded him completely now. He could not win, but he could buy time. 10 seconds. Void tendrils wrapped around his arms. They burned like acid. He felt them pulling at his mind, trying to erase him. He fought back with everything he had. 5 seconds. Then something grabbed him from behind. It was Lyria. She had come back. She wrapped her arms around him. Her armor touched his. She activated her emergency shield. The shield expanded into a bubble. It pushed back the Void soldiers. 3 seconds. Jake tried to push her away. She refused to let go. She told him she came to Earth asking for sanctuary. He gave it to her. Now she was returning the favor. 2 seconds, the shield began to crack. The void pressed against it. Reality screamed. 1 second. The nuclear device detonated. Dimensional space exploded. The anchor ship. Core shattered. All those stolen dimensions broke free at once. The energy was beyond comprehension. It tore through the ship. It tore through the fleet. It tore through reality itself. Jake and Lyria were caught in the blast. The shield held for a microsecond, then it failed. Jake felt himself being pulled apart, every atom separating, every thought scattering. He was dying, no, he was being erased. Then everything went white on Earth. People looked up. The Void fleet vanished, all 50 ships gone in an instant. The Void soldiers on the ground dissolved. They faded like smoke in wind. Their portals collapsed. The dimensional rifts sealed. Silence fell across the battlefields. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody believed it was over. Then, someone cheered. The cheer spread from one soldier to another, from one city to another, across the world. Humanity had won. The cost was terrible. Billions dead or vanished. Entire cities gone. Whole nations devastated. But they had won. General Harrison stood in the command center. She received reports from every continent. The Void was gone. Earth was safe. But there was no word from the strike team, no signal from Emberwing, nothing from Jake or Lyria. Harrison closed her eyes. She had sent them on a suicide mission. She knew they would not return, but they saved the world. 3 days later, search and rescue teams found something floating in high orbit. It was Emberwing. The dragon was barely alive. Her body was burned and broken, but she was breathing. They brought her down carefully. Medical teams worked for days to save her. The fake dragon survived. But she was alone. No sign of Jake. No sign of Lyria. Emberwing grieved. Her cries echoed across the Nevada base. Everyone who heard them felt the sorrow. A memorial service was held. Jake Morrison was declared a hero. Lyria of the Althari was honored. Their names were carved in stone. Millions attended, billions watched. The world mourned its saviors. Emberwing refused to leave the memorial. She lay beside the stone for weeks, not eating, not moving, just waiting, hoping. But they did not come. The world began to rebuild. Nations worked together. The unity forged in battle remained. Technology advanced rapidly. Althari knowledge combined with human innovation, cities were reconstructed, better than before. Stronger, protected by shield generators, life went on. But those who fought remembered. They remembered the sacrifices. They remembered the fear. They remembered the cost of victory. General Harrison retired from military service. She became the first director of the Dimensional Defense Coalition, a new organization dedicated to protecting Earth and preparing for the next threat. Because the Void was still out there, the fleet they destroyed was only one of many. The war was not over. It had only just begun. Scientists detected signals from other dimensions, other species, other survivors. They were responding to the call Lyria sent before the battle. They wanted to come to Earth. They wanted sanctuary. They wanted to join the Alliance. Earth prepared to welcome them. The planet that nearly died became a beacon of hope. Humanity that almost fell became the defenders of dimensions. And in the Nevada base, beside a memorial stone, a dragon waited loyal to the end, waiting for her friends to come home. 3 months passed since the battle. Earth rebuilt slowly. Cities rose from the ruins. People returned to their homes, or what was left of them. The wounded healed. The orphaned found new families. The world carried its scars, but it survived. The Dimensional Defense Coalition grew stronger. New technologies emerged from Althari knowledge. Humans learned to sense dimensional rifts. They built early warning systems. They created better weapons, better shields, better everything. Other species began arriving. The Scaroth came first. Lizard people with scales like armor. They were miners and engineers. They shared technology for harvesting dimensional energy. Their ships were massive and slow, but incredibly tough. They had survived the Void by hiding in collapsed dimensions, waiting for a chance to fight back. The Lumeni came next. Beings made of living crystal. They communicated through light patterns. Their knowledge of dimensional mathematics was profound. They taught humans how to navigate between realities, how to build stable portals, how to travel safely through dimensional space. More species followed, the Kavari, the Tesserin, the Morphids. Each brought their own knowledge, their own technology, their own stories of survival. Earth became the center of a growing alliance, a coalition of survivors all united against the Void. General Harrison coordinated it all. She was older now. Gray hair turned white, lines deepened on her face, but her eyes were still sharp, still determined. The coalition built a fleet, human warships combined with alien designs. They were strange vessels, part metal, part energy, part living tissue. But they worked. They were fast and deadly, armed with weapons from a dozen species. At the Nevada base, Emberwing remained. She had recovered physically, her wounds healed, her strength returned, but she stayed by the memorial, waiting. The dragon allowed children to visit her. She was gentle with them, let them touch her scales, feel her warmth. But at night she would cry, long mournful sounds that made people weep. One night the sensors detected something, a faint signal from deep space. It was Aelthari in origin. Barely detectable, flickering in and out. The scientists analyzed it for days. They traced it to a location in dimensional wreckage. The collapsed space where the anchor ship exploded. Harrison called for volunteers. It would be dangerous. The dimensional space there was unstable. Reality itself was broken. Hundreds volunteered immediately, including Emberwing. The dragon would not be left behind. They assembled a rescue team, the best pilots, the best dimensional navigators. They took 3 ships, all equipped with the newest technology. Emberwing flew alongside them. The journey took 2 days. They had to navigate through collapsed dimensions, through spaces that should not exist, through regions where time flowed backward. The dimensional wreckage was massive. Fragments of the anchor ship, pieces frozen in impossible positions. Some parts existed in multiple places at once, other parts phased in and out of reality. The signal led them deeper into a pocket of stable space, somehow protected from the chaos around it. They found it floating in the darkness, a sphere of frozen time. Inside they could see 2 figures, Jake and Lyria, suspended in a moment, not moving, not breathing, but not dead either. The emergency shield had saved them. It created a bubble outside normal time. They were trapped there, alive but unreachable. The rescue team worked for hours. They used dimensional technology to crack the time bubble. It was delicate work. One mistake would collapse the entire thing. Finally, they broke through. Time resumed inside the bubble. Jake and Lyria fell. The rescue team caught them. Both were unconscious. Their vital signs were weak, but they were alive. The ships raced back to Earth. Medical teams stood ready. Emberwing flew faster than she ever had before. Her friends were coming home. Jake woke up 3 weeks later. He was in a hospital bed. His body was covered in bandages. Everything hurt, but he was alive. Lyria was in the bed next to him, still unconscious, still healing. The doctor said she would survive, but it would take time. Jake watched her sleep. Her silver hair spread across the pillow. Her face peaceful. He had thought they would die. They should have died. But somehow they survived. Lyria woke 2 weeks after Jake. Her first word was his name. He was sitting beside her bed, reading reports about the coalition. When her eyes opened, they looked at each other for a long moment. Then Lyria smiled. It was the most beautiful thing Jake had ever seen. They recovered slowly. Physical therapy, mental counseling, learning to exist again. The dimensional explosion had changed them. They could sense things now, feel the fabric of reality, see between dimensions. It was a gift and a curse. General Harrison visited them. She told them everything that happened. How Earth united the survivors, how the coalition grew, how Emberwing waited. She also told them the hard truth. The Void fleet they destroyed was only a scouting force. Intelligence from the other species confirmed it. The main Void Empire still existed, deep in dimensional space. It was vast beyond comprehension, thousands of fleets, millions of worlds consumed, an empire built on erasure. And now they knew about Earth. Jake and Lyria listened in silence. When Harrison finished, they looked at each other. Then they told her they were ready. Ready to fight again. Ready to lead. Ready to take the war to the enemy. Harrison smiled. She said she was hoping they would say that because the coalition needed leaders, people who had faced the void and won, people who understood what was at stake, people who refused to surrender. 2 months later, Jake and Lyria stood before the Coalition Council. Representatives from 15 species attended. The chamber was enormous, built to accommodate different biologies. Some delegates breathed oxygen, others breathed methane. Some did not breathe at all, but they all came together, united by survival. Lyria spoke first. She told them about the 10,000-year war, about how her people fought alone, about how they lost. But then she told them about humans, about adaptation and stubbornness, about refusing to accept defeat. She said Earth taught her something. Fighting alone leads to failure, but fighting together leads to hope. Jake spoke next. He was not a politician, not a diplomat, just a soldier. But he spoke from the heart. He said humanity was new to dimensional warfare, new to the void, new to most of the species. Here. But humans understood one thing. When someone asks for sanctuary, you give it. When a friend needs help, you provide it. When an enemy threatens, you fight. Earth would stand with anyone who opposed the void, no matter the cost. The council discussed for hours. Some species wanted to hide, to find a safe dimension, and wait. Others wanted to negotiate, to find peace with the void somehow. But most wanted to fight. They wanted to take back what was stolen. They wanted revenge. The vote was called. It was unanimous. The coalition would launch an offensive. They would build a fleet. They would find the Void Empire. They would strike at the heart, not just defend, but attack. The chamber erupted in approval. Different species making different sounds, all expressing the same thing. Determination, hope, defiance. Construction began. Immediately. Shipyards were built in orbit factories on every coalition. World technology was shared freely. Human engineering, Skaroth, mining, Lumini mathematics, Kavari weapons, Tesseran shields, all combined into something new. The first warships launched within months. They were magnificent, sleek and deadly, covered in markings from all coalition species, a symbol of unity. The flagship was named Defiance. Jake was given command. Lyria served as tactical officer. Together they trained the crew, humans and aliens working side by side, learning each other languages, each other cultures, building trust through shared purpose. Emberwing had a special place on the ship, a massive chamber with high ceilings. She could fly freely there. The dragon was happy again. Her family was together. More ships launched every week. The fleet grew. The coalition grew. Hope grew. 1 year after the Battle of Earth, the fleet was ready. 100 warships, crews from 15 species, armed with weapons that combined all their knowledge, protected by shields that bent reality itself. They gathered in orbit above Earth, the planet that brought them together, the world that refused to die. Jake stood on the bridge of Defiance, Lyria beside him, Emberwing in her chamber below. General Harrison watched from Earth. The whole coalition watched, waiting. Jake gave the order. The fleet activated their dimensional drives. Reality tore open before them, a portal large enough for the entire fleet. They flew through into dimensional space, toward the Void Empire, toward war, toward the unknown. But they flew together, and that made all the difference. Behind them, Earth spun in space, blue and green-scarred but healing, home to humanity, home to hope. The world that almost ended became the world that saved existence itself. Lyria looked at Jake. He looked back. They both knew the odds, knew the danger, knew they might not return. But they also knew something else. They were not alone. They had each other. They had Emberwing. They had the coalition. And that midnight, when Lyria asked to stay, when she knocked on Jake's door bleeding and desperate, he could have refused. He could have turned her away, but he said yes. And that single act of kindness, that moment of compassion changed everything. It saved 2 people. Then it saved a planet. Then it saved dimensions. Because sometimes the most important battles are not won with weapons, they are won with choices. The choice to help, the choice to stand together, the choice to hope. The fleet flew on through dimensional space toward the Void Empire, toward the greatest battle in history. Jake looked at the view screen, at the stars between dimensions, at the infinite possibilities. He smiled. This was just the beginning. The war for reality had begun, and humanity would not fight it alone, never alone again.